So a mutual friend of ours, Amber Acosta, who was the associate director of the program at the time that y'all were in the program, and I were having a conversation, or she was filling me in on a conversation that y'all had about kids and how I don't want to speak for you, but do you plan on having children?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I already knew the answer to that question, but like our listeners needed to hear. I don't think that my husband and I plan on having children either. I reserve the right to change my mind. But if someone said you have to decide right now, and I'm certainly getting to that point. I'm 37, I think. Yeah, I'm 37. I don't really keep track anymore. I'm 37. So I'm getting to the point where if someone doesn't, my body will probably make me decide soon. But I don't plan on having children. And I know you didn't plan on having children. And I think Amber and I were talking, and she said she didn't even really realize that was an option. She has 3 children, and before moving to College Station, it didn't even occur to her that women, it was just a thing you did, right? You got married, right. You had kids, and it didn't occur to her to even think about whether or not she wanted to do that in life. And I think she would have chosen to, and is happy with her decision. But just the fact that it wasn't necessarily ever presented as a decision, I think was interesting to her. And then meeting me and hearing, she asked me probably 1,000 questions about it. And she was just saying, y'all had a conversation this weekend about that too. And she was asking you a lot of questions, and just, it was kind of blowing her mind. But we see now especially I think women who have careers are making the choice not to have children. And I think it's an interesting topic. It's interesting, especially I think being in Texas, maybe being at Texas A&M specifically, I don't know, where a lot of people get in relationships, long-term relationships as undergrads, get married, have kids. I know if my undergrad students ask, do you have kids? No. When are you going to have kids? I don't know. I don't know that I am. And it's like, what? Oh my gosh. What's wrong with you? So just, what kind of pressure do you feel? What's led you to that decision?
Yeah, I grew up with, my parents weren't very, I don't know what the right word is for this, but I never had the feeling that like my parents were soulmates. It wasn't like that for us growing up. And they had a lot of difficulty. And I know that a lot of that difficulty was because they had children to provide for. And so when I was 17 and I met Tim and we started dating, I fully had it in my head that I was going to have kids, because I also did not know that you could do it another way. Even though I had grown up with people who didn't have any kids, I was just told so many times, you have to have them. It's the best thing you'll ever do, and you'll always regret it if you don't. When I was about 19, I would say, I really started to feel like, I don't think that's something I want. I really love kids, and I've been around a lot of kids, and I love to babysit kids, but I've just thought about the time constraints that I'll put on my life and how much responsibility that is. And it's not something I really want. That's just what I came to the conclusion of. And as I've gotten older, that feeling has only gotten stronger. I've not gotten more conflicted, because I've been told so many times, well, you're only 21 now. By the time you're 25, you'll think differently. Well, you're only 25 now. By the time you're 30, you'll think differently. And I'm 26 now, and it is so firm in my mind that that's not something that I want.
That's interesting. My sister and I have had a lot of conversations about this, because we have chosen very different paths. She is a stay-at-home mom and does amazing things with her 4 children, and she loves them dearly. And that was the path that she chose. And I've chosen a path in the other extreme. And I don't know that my path is, well, let me back up on that. I've chosen a path in another extreme to pursue a career and not have children. And we'll talk in a minute. I don't think that those two things have to be mutually exclusive. I don't think that you have to choose my path or my sister's path. There is certainly a path in between. My mom was on the path in between. She worked. Career wasn't necessarily the priority. She worked because she needed to, and financially, and then, was also a mother. She liked to work, my mom, when we've talked about it, she likes to tell her friends that I'm childless by choice, because there are certainly people out there who can't have children and dearly want them. And and that's a whole nother kind of pain that I don't understand. And so that I've never experienced. And so she likes to make that distinction. I'm childless by choice to her friends. I'm like, okay, great. Sounds good to me.
It's not really any of their business.
But people ask all the time, right?
I know, exactly.
I mean, all the time.
And that's usually my response, though. It's not really any of your business.
I'm going to come back to that in a minute, because there's another question that women enjoy asking each other in particular that is not any of anybody's business, which is, are you pregnant and when are you due?
Yeah.
There's some women close to me who have gotten that question from other women recently. And I would like to say to all of our female listeners out there, stop. Don't ask.
Well, or male listeners. I mean,
guys do it too.
Really don't stick your foot in that one.
I think most guys like have heard like the horror story from one of their guy friends who asked, and she was like, I'm not pregnant.
Yeah.
And like, that's something that we know to stay away from for the most part.
Yes.
And not to say that there aren't men who do it, but women do it to each other all the time.
They do.
Stop it.
That's who I get the most opposition from. I don't think I've ever had a man say anything to me like, you really need to. I don't think I've ever had that.
Which is it? My sister actually, I think with her third one, maybe her fourth, but the UPS guy is delivering a package and she's pretty pregnant with him. And he goes, wow, twins? And she's pregnant. And she was like, no, thank you. Shuts the door. But I think it is oftentimes women, and it is this concept. My sister and I talk about this a lot of times, because for her, feminism is a dirty word that she doesn't like. And,
oh, really?
And she doesn't like it because it makes her feel guilty for wanting to be a mom, which is not the purpose of feminism, right? So then I always counter with her that the purpose of feminism is that we all get to choose what we want to do and not feel guilty about it, right? But for her, she's like, but I feel like I have to justify why I want to stay home with my kids.
Yeah, I get that.
And I want to be a mom. That's what I want to do. And I think that the service that she provides, not only to her family, but to the world by raising these 4 children really well, is massive. I think so this has never been a struggle for me because I just never did want kids, but the part my mom struggles with is the playing the middle. She's very supportive of my sister staying home. She's very supportive of me working and not having kids. I think it's much more of a struggle in the middle, just a challenge, right? And that was where my mom lived, was in that challenge, because it is harder to prioritize work. It is harder to prioritize kids. It is that struggle of balancing the two. And I think a lot of moms that I know say, I choose to work because maybe I need to financially, but I would choose to work anyway because I'm a better mom when I work during the day and see my kids at night versus being home with them all day or doing something else. And I know there's so many complexities in that. And I don't know how much. I am an ambitious person who has prioritized work in a lot of steps along the way. I don't know. I can't separate how much that's played into my choice to not have kids, but I do know that my sister, when probably around the time that I got married, she had a son around the time that I got married, and I think around the time that Ryan and I got engaged. And I think she really thought that her having a child would change my mind. And it led to her feeling kind of insulted, like, well, you don't love my son enough to have inspired you to have kids. And it wasn't that. I just never really did want that. And so my best friend and I were talking to my sister, and my best friend said she's never wanted to have kids. I remember her saying at 5, we have been best friends since we're 3. I remember her saying at 5 she didn't want to have kids, and my sister was like, yeah, that's how I know she doesn't know she wants to have kids. Who knows that at 5? But I've never had that instinct, never had that desire. And a lot of times, I feel like, is there something wrong with me internally, where I don't have that desire? And I don't know. I was at a conference once, and a woman said someone who doesn't have their own biological kids gets to have many children, right? They get to, because your time and energy is not dedicated to your biological children, you get to have many children. I thought, well, that's cool. I would love for that to be my legacy, right? That I don't think of y'all as my kids, my students, because I'm certainly not going to be your moms. But you know, I get to invest in a lot of other people's children as a result.
That's really cool to hear. Actually, I hadn't heard that, and that's awesome because I do feel very, very selfish often for thinking that way. And for a long time, I've just said, yeah, I guess I am. You know, I guess I am selfish. And, but no, that's a really good point that you get to.
It can be a selfless act.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah, exactly. But my mom was the same. She was actually the breadwinner in our family.
Yeah.
So my dad stayed at home with us. And I had, you know, quote, traditional gender roles reversed in my head. I thought dads were the ones that stayed home and took care of kids.
Cute, yeah.
So I was like, well, that's not something I want to do. It's perfect. I'll just have a husband to do it. Turns out.
Holler to the house husbands.
Right. Well, Tim would totally do it, and he's made that clear. Yeah. But yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it turns out that that's not a super easy thing to find in today's society.
It's not.
Or that you're capable of doing that, having one parent that doesn't work. Yeah. It's not always possible.
I remember I was out at an establishment that sells adult beverages in college, and I was not partaking, but boldly stood up on a chair and was like, does anyone want to be a house husband? Because I was so frustrated. I was just so frustrated. Like, does anyone want to be a house husband? I got no takers. But, you know, and that was in 99, early 2000s when I was in school. And that really, it wasn't even on my radar that I had just learned that word or that phrase, right, of house husband. Like, it wasn't even on my radar that was a possibility either. And then, you know, kind of met some people who thought that might be an okay idea. But now I have male students, not in the MBA program because you're coming back to invest in your career, but undergrad students. I've had male students who have said, you know, I'll say, what do you want to do after longer term after graduation? Honestly, I want to stay home and be a husband and a father. And it's like, that's so awesome that you feel comfortable saying that, because, and we've on this podcast talked some about sexism towards women, but certainly that same pressure of masculinity, or the opposite side of the coin, I guess, pressure of masculinity for men is very, very real too. And that, you know, a man should be able to stay home. My parents had more traditional gender roles, but they both did work. My dad actually traveled all the time. So he was gone usually Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday, and then would come home and be a 100% dad. It was awesome because he, you know, would coach our teams and come pick us up from school. And when he was home, he was really, really home. He didn't have to split work and home. But for a while, at one point, my dad lost his job and he was staying home with us, and my mom was working, and she really probably could have had more earning potential than my dad did, especially if she had pursued a different degree, but she had probably more earning potential than my dad did. But that, and so my dad stayed home with us for a little bit, and then my sister fell off the top of a jungle gym when she was like 1, and my mom was like, maybe this isn't such a good idea. But I don't think that was really his fault. I think it just was one of those things that happened. But but that's how she tells the story anyways. Well, you know, once your sister fell off the 10-foot jungle gym at 1, I thought maybe I should stay home, but or at least we should split this more evenly. But I think, you know, even in talking to my parents about it now, and how that would have probably been a wise decision for them, that my mom was accepted to some of the top law schools in the country and didn't go, and she could have done that, right, and then been the primary breadwinner, but that wasn't a conversation that people were having then. That wasn't acceptable in the way that it, I think, is becoming now. Although I do know a few house husbands who there are a lot of challenges, because the first question people ask at a party is, what do you do? Right. And meaning, what do you do for a living? And saying I stay home, you get those odd looks in the same way that you and I do when we say we don't necessarily want to have children. And so I think that pressure is very real. Or you're the one dad at the playground. That's a challenging dynamic to navigate, things like that too.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, after you.
One of the things that I say all the time is feminism is beneficial to both sides. Mm-hmm. Sexism is harmful to both sides, because then you have, expectations placed on men that you need to be the primary breadwinner. You can't stay home with your kids. And that's silly, in my opinion. There's two equal people. Figure out what your strengths are and go with that.
Yeah. There's two documentaries by the same group. One is called Misrepresentation, which I think y'all watched in the program. And then the other one is The Mask You Live In. I believe I got that title right. And that one is for men. It's the mask of masculinity that they are required to live in. You can't cry. You can't, all of those things are harmful.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
What were you going to say, Ben?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that is...
What do you think you can add to this conversation?
Ben.
I think that in our house, I think the way things are probably going to go. So Maddie's getting her second master's degree right now in counseling. And I think the way things are probably going to work long term is that she'll end up being the one at home, but not because she's not working, just because you can run a practice either out of your home or out of, or from someplace that's very close to home. And my work is very flexible, but not quite that flexible. So I don't know, we may split it up somehow, some way, but if it had been the way things had gone, I would definitely be the first one to walk up and say, I'm a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
You know how cool that is?
I got a sugar mama.
Yeah, exactly right. She's just 10 years. She's just 10 years younger than I am. But
you really checked all the good boxes. Right?
I guess so. Yeah, my wife is great. She's amazing.
She really is.
She is.
But
we all have very good partners. It's nice.
Yes.
I know, we do.
Yeah,
that's really nice.
Good.
We do.
Regardless of how you split it up, it's good to have partners who are supportive and who, and I think now 50-50 is not unusual, right? I mean, maybe it's not 50-50 all day long with children, but it is, guys are doing the housework and all of those things in support of women, and it's not unusual or taboo like it used to be, or even not even if it was taboo. It's just
it's just looked down on.
Yeah, I think looked down on maybe, or just not even thought of. Like, I don't know that a man would have thought. I mean, my granddad certainly would not have thought, I should go home and cook dinner tonight. Like, that just wouldn't have even occurred to him. Now, I mean, as my grandmother got sick and he learned to do the laundry and learned to cook and learned to clean and all, it was interesting hearing him go through that process because it was something he never did. Of course, and then on the same side of that coin, she never filled up her car with gas or ever wrote a check, right? She had never done those things. And so now Ryan and I joke sometimes, I'm like, because he has things that he does. I actually don't know how to turn on our washing machine. I'm like, you really need to teach me. I mean, this makes it sound. It does look like a spaceship. Let me just say, it looks like a spaceship. He got a very good deal at Lowe's because they were a little late on the order, and no one could figure out how to work it. I need special instructions. No, but he's like, no, don't worry about it. But we joke because those people who don't know how to turn on a computer now because someone, especially executives, right? Someone did it for them. Like, you couldn't put a appointment on your calendar if your life depended on it. It's like, I don't want to be that person. Like, we need to switch the roles that we have, or the responsibilities that we have every once in a while, so we could survive.
There's a computer you don't know how to turn on. It happens to be the one that's attached to your washing machine.
Totally. I don't know how to.
We live in the future, guys. We have these computers. We have washing machines so complicated. Shannon Deere can't figure it out.
Siri, can you start the laundry, please? Come on, Siri. Get it together.
Siri.
Alexa.
Alexa.
We do have I don't know. Honestly, it's probably not that hard. I just haven't tried. And if I don't know how to turn it on, I don't have to do the laundry. I got fired from doing laundry very early on in our relationship. When Ryan and I were dating, he was in an apartment that had like a central laundry area. He didn't have a washer and dryer in his apartment. And I had a house that had a washer and dryer. And so I was like, I'm going to be the really cool girlfriend. I'll do your laundry if you want to bring it over to my house. And then I probably one too many times, which is probably the 10th time, forgot to move the laundry from the washing machine to the dryer, and it got like mildewy and smelly. And he was like, so I really like this using your washing machine thing, but I'm going to have to do your laundry for you. And I was like, deal. Sounds like a good plan.
I'll provide the spaceship and you fly the spaceship.
That's right. Our washing machine at that point was definitely not a spaceship. It had the dials, and I could use that one, but I'm sure I can figure out. I'm going to have to go home and figure out this.
Yeah, now you're going to have to, and you're going to have to report back on how it goes.
I don't really want to. It's okay. But the whole point of that was to say that, I think roles are split quite differently. And there's a lot of data that shows that leads to happier families and better child behavior and better relationships between partners. And so,
yeah, and in some cases, I guess from a very literal standpoint, it's not about making different assumptions. It's about pulling the assumptions out of the system and just asking questions.
Right.
What do you want to do? What do I want to do?
Yeah.
How should we split this up? What's the most?
What are your strengths?
Yeah. What are your strengths?
And I think that's really important, because my sister who stays at home, that is equally feminist as me choosing to work, because that is the choice she wanted to make, and the choice that her husband has empowered her to make, or that she feels empowered to make. Right? I mean, it's that they've. Let me rephrase that, because I don't want to say her husband empowered her to make that decision. So edit that out. That is the decision that she and her husband together have been able to make, because that's what she wanted to do.
In our case, I support feminism. I'm a big fan of all the great things that women are doing and have done in the workplace. But in my case, it's also just about I support capable people. When we were figuring out what our roles were going to be, I don't want to get into what sort of pushed this conversation, because it's a little bit sensitive, not between me and my wife, but anyway.
Sure.
So moving
Complex.
past the details of it, it's a little complicated. But I said to her, you are really talented. And if you do want to, because there was a time when she did want to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. And I said, look, if that's what you want to do, that's what you should do. But bear in mind that being out of the workplace for a long, long time may make it an issue for you to get back in. And frankly, you're really smart in these particular ways, in ways that would make you a real asset to the working community. And just think carefully. It's your decision. I mean, if that's what you want to do, I'll support that. But just think carefully about where we're going to be 20 years from now. Lord willing, we're both still alive at that point. Lord willing, we're blessed with kids, because in our case, we do plan to have kids. But at that point, what then? And just give it some thought. And that's part of why she's in grad school again now, I think.
Yeah. I think that's really important too, because I started the part of this conversation by saying my sister has chosen to have kids and stay home. I've chosen to have a job and have kids. And we have to be better at the middle of that. We have to make it easier. I think, and I also said, I don't know, I can't separate how much of me not wanting to have kids is because of work. I think that it has nothing to do with work. I mean, if I really had to, and I've thought about it a lot, I don't think that I am choosing not to have kids because I'm prioritizing my career. I don't think that that's why I don't want to have children. I think I just don't want to have children. But I also can't separate those two things. I don't know what my life would be like had I not prioritized career as much. But I know that I think, because of a lot of stuff that I've read, I think that women are choosing not to have kids or choosing to have kids later because they're prioritizing their career. And I think as a society, we have to do better at that, because we need people to have children. I mean, we want people to have children for themselves, for our world, for all kinds of reasons, and to be able to invest in those children in a way that gives them an opportunity to thrive. And right now, the U.S. workforce does not do that. I mean, we're one of the only developed country that doesn't have paid maternity leave. And a lot of organizations, including Texas A&M, doesn't have paid maternity leave at all. And so that is those kinds of things is for childcare, financial support for childcare. Those kinds of things are things that are going to make our country excel and make more women feel like the workforce is accessible and a place where they can thrive.
Yeah. And I think now that it is more cost prohibitive to have children, and well, I feel like in today's world, it's pretty common that you need dual incomes. And for us to not have resources to make that happen and also have children, it makes that decision very difficult. Do I want to work? Do I want to have kids? Because you kind of have to choose between the two.
Right. And it should not be a binary.
Factor.
Yeah, it shouldn't be either work or have kids decision. But I think oftentimes it feels that way.
Exactly. And I'll answer that question for me, the question of if I didn't prioritize my career, because I'm pretty early in my career, I have never wanted kids. So it's not a...
Right. It's not a career issue.
No, for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not sure if that's true for you. I can't speak for you.
Right.
But for me, it's just like gut level. It's not something I want.
Yeah, I don't, and I think I made that decision at 5 when I didn't have a career.
Right.
No, I mean, I think I made that decision even.
You might have had a career at 5.
I probably did.
Knowing you did.
I mean, I even remember, and this may be too many details, but I remember being a little kid and making myself play with a baby doll. I think I only had one. And I remember I pretended like I had it with Patrick Swayze. Holla.
Good choice.
He is, I know.
Good choice.
But
rest in peace.
At 5, I wasn't allowed to watch Dirty Dancing, by the way, but I did have the soundtrack on a record that played over and over and over again. So I still had a really strong affinity for Patrick Swayze. But I can remember remembering being in my room and holding the baby and being like, okay, make yourself want to do this. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And I love, one of the things that you said, because it blows my husband's mind a little. I mean, he doesn't want children either, but I love children. I love being around children. I love holding children. I love kids. So it's not that I don't love them. It's mostly what you said about the responsibility. I was a lifeguard for one summer and I hated it because I did not want to be responsible for someone else's life, right? It's partially that. It's a lot of factors that the responsibility of raising children is immense, right? That you literally are going to make them great and you are going to mess them up because you're human too, right? And so there's a lot of responsibility in that has fear around it.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else we want to touch on?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I was going to say real quick, Tim and I aren't married yet. We've been together for 8 years. And we get the question, oh, why aren't you married? And I get told a lot that he's not going to commit to me and stuff, which is an issue.
And if you know Tim, you're like,
yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah. So anyway, we haven't gotten married yet for a lot of reasons. We've been in school, stuff like that. But the biggest reason people tell me you need to get married and you need to hurry up with that is because, well, when are you going to have kids then? And then I have to tell them, like, what do you say?
Never.
Yeah. I am a heartless woman who does not want children.
Exactly. And that's what I get told all the time. Like, oh, how selfish. I've had people say that to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of pressure.
But and the selfish thing is interesting because a lot of people, when they say, but you don't want to have kids, you won't. And all of the things that they say after that are very selfish reasons to have kids.
I agree.
Like, no one will be able to take care of you when you're old. I'm like, is that selfish or selfless? I mean, and I know that's not why they had kids. I mean, they had kids for very selfless reasons, but all of the things that come after that sound very selfish. Like, you won't have that. We should do the craziest things you've heard because you and your husband will never love each other like my husband and I love each other if you don't have kids. Yeah, those are good ones.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Or, well, I can't die in a plane crash because I'm a mom. Like, it's okay if you do. Those are good ones. You can edit those out, by the way.
Yeah.
But
gosh.
it's tough.
Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to stay up to date on our latest videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. If you're in a rush or on the road, you can still join us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. If you want to learn more about us or our guests, please visit our website at mays.tamu.edu/podcasts. Also, please check out Mays Business School's academic programs. They're the sponsors of our show, and you can find them in the description. Thanks, and gig 'em.